What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Dense Pixels Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brad, joined by my co-host, Carrie.
What's up?
After a nice week last week of talking about, games coming out in the future and Gamescom and a lot of excitement, we are back to our regularly scheduled The Industry is Garbage program for you today. Later in the show, I will talk to you about several strategy games that I've been playing because I am, for some reason, neck deep in strategy game morass right now in this final push until Astrobot comes out this week, and then I'll finally be playing a new game again. But first, we have to talk about the big story that dropped today. It's actually fortuitous that we are a day late recording this week because Sony has decided that as of this Friday, September 6th, they are delisting recent beleaguered hero shooter Concord and refunding and pulling the game from service and refunding every single person that bought the game as they try to figure out what the best path forward is for Concord, which I would imagine is going to be either like a free-to-play release that happens in the next like 6 to 12 months, mm-hmm. or just closing up shop and writing it off as a sunk cost, essentially.
Yeah, this is wild. Obviously, we talked a bit about how even at its so-called peak, this game did not have anybody playing it. Mm-hmm. So this doesn't come as a complete surprise, but I guess given the sort of high-profile nature of this being like a Sony-backed game, that it is a little interesting to see them within literally 2 weeks of the game being launched just to be like, whoops, guess we need to do more work on this. So I think ultimately everybody wants to see a success story, right? Mm-hmm. Like I feel like even if you're like me and you didn't really know what Concord was until it released a couple weeks ago to middling reviews.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, about this game specifically, like, Suicide Squad, I think people were, because we had seen the lead up to that game coming out, like we knew mm-hmm. it was all going to be shit, and like, mm-hmm. and we also wanted WB to kind of feel it for, like just a naked cash grab of a game, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so mm-hmm. I think that there was I don't want to go as far to say joy around the reception for that game, but at the same time, people were just like, you reap what you sow.
That was sort of it, right? It wasn't like, tee-hee, look at how bad they fucked up. It was more like, well, they fucked up, no surprise.
Yeah, but like with this one, like I don't even think like it ginned up that much negative sentiment. Like people just kind of like, this game came out and the response was basically, wow, like this would have been a lot more successful 6 years ago when they were still,
I think it's that. The game. It's a few things at play here. From what I've seen of it, one, I think it's wild that the way the characters look in game is so unabashedly bland compared to how they look in these little animated character vignettes that they did, which mm-hmm. I think carry a degree of style about them. It's not blowing my mind, but it at least has more of like a unique sense of self than the actual in-game models have. A lot of people have complained about the sort of Sony realism paintbrush that was taken to this game, and I think that's a pretty valid criticism in terms of how it looks. And then, ultimately, I think it is a perfectly cromulent hero shooter that unfortunately has landed in a market that is, one, extremely oversaturated, and two, full of other hero shooters that are better reviewed, that have more of a style about them, and that are free to play, whereas mm-hmm. this game was $40. So it's a hard sell. It's like, why would anybody pay $40 when they can't get attached to any of the characters, which should be your selling point in a game like this? That's the selling point of Overwatch, right? is look at all these fun characters that we've slammed together into a single game experience. So yeah, I mean, good on them for pulling the plug, I guess, as quick as they did.
Mm-hmm.
And good on them for offering full refunds and to explaining people who may have purchased it through Steam or Epic Games or through a different retailer, like how to get that refund.
Because there absolutely is a world, and I would argue that most companies, most big publishers at least, would probably just like ride this shit out and be like, you know, like, yeah, I guess, like, I there was a report going around that as of I think mid last week that Concord had only sold 25,000 copies, which is abysmally low across you know, PS4 and Steam for a game like this. So yeah, like I guess I'm saying that if the game had, even with the reception around it, had the game had a better commercial response, I don't think that they're doing this. I think they are only doing this because it was so bad that they're,
it was
like,
so bad that they haven't
really
even come
losing?
close to they haven't come close to even breaking even. The sort of interesting side effect that this announcement has had on the people who are playing
has it spiked because it's going away?
So funny to see. So I'm pals with Mr. Gene Park at the Washington Post. He's their primary games reporter. And so he's been reporting on this situation. And he says that currently you have a lot of people starting matches and then killing themselves as quickly as possible to end the match as quickly as they possibly can. Because you still get experience whether you win or lose. So it's actually much faster if you load in and then immediately kill yourself. So you've got people trying to power level in order to get the platinum on the game before it's
Jesus
taken
Christ.
down.
Oh my God. I don't count myself in their number anymore because I've really shifted off of PlayStation. But back when I was a little trophy farming freak, this is exactly the sort of thing that people would do in stuff like this. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is actually extremely funny to just sort of see what he's reporting. Apparently someone said that they created a PSN group with 20 people who are acting as 4 groups of 5 trying to find each other in matchmaking. They keep jumping off the map and finishing the game as fast as possible in order to queue into the next one. So, yeah, folks. Yeah, apparently, basically, the new Concord meta is how fast a squad can commit suicide.
That is something else right there. So what do you think? I mean, do you think we're going to see a free-to-play version of this come out, or do you think there's going to be like, you know what, this isn't it. Obviously, we missed the boat. We were way too late to the party, and just kind of let it just let it be what it is, and just let it die, essentially.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it came back free to play for them in order to try and break even on microtransactions and maybe use the press around it to garner some degree of interest when it does come back. Maybe the press around it, I think, has a lot of people being like, well, what the fuck, was it that bad for them to pull it? But I think it's, there's ultimately Concord, I think, failed because by and large, most people are fucking sick of service games. Everybody who would want to play a service game is already playing one.
Well, or everyone everyone has their live service.
That's it. Game. That's it. Is everybody who wants to be into that style of game has the game that is for them. So no one's going to be jumping ship from one to another. It's like MMOs, right? Like, you're not going to convince someone who has played World of Warcraft for the last 20 years to suddenly pick up Final Fantasy XIV because the new expansion was good. Like, that generally doesn't happen. Like, you have a lot more people coming into FF14 for a myriad of other reasons, but generally it's not like they're coming from a different big MMO in order to do that. So I think it's, basically, I think the lesson that we've learned with Concord, that we've learned with Anthem, that we've learned with Suicide Squad is that like stop just stop with the live service
stop trend
games.
chasing,
like
or just stop trend chasing in general. Like that's
stop trend chasing.
I think that's the biggest sin here, is that, again,
I think the issue with this particular trend chase though is that this is a very expensive, lengthy development kind of trend chase. So you've been having, hundreds of people work on something for, in Concord's case, 8 years for something that has now been generally out of favor for the last 5 years.
Right.
Like,
and by the way, I think that I think, like, I really hope that the blowback from this doesn't hit Firewalk Studios, because it's not their fault that they made this game.
No.
It's interesting that Sony was developing this, right? Because there is a world where Concord could have had a much better rollout other than the one we got, but it's not a world that's catered to the current state of console gaming specifically, but of big publisher console gaming even more specifically, because in any rational world, a game like this would have been available in some kind of a alpha state or like an early access state 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And you could have like, in this time where the studio is at its largest, like I would imagine the last couple of years has been when they've been at their highest number of personnel, when you're going in that last stretch to get the game release ready. You could have had feedback. You could have seen what the problem is, what the problems of the game are. You could have seen how the market react to it, and you could have adjusted from there and made a better product overall. But that's not how the console marketplace is kind of set up to be. I mean, Overwatch, for worse, most people would say, is obviously not the same game that it was 8 years ago. Fortnite, obviously not the same game that it was when very much not the same game it was when it was first envisioned. But even Fortnite as we know it, the behemoth that it is, not the same game that it was, 5 years ago. These games that have live service aspects to them, evolving and changing is a requirement, but you have to get people in the door first. And a $40 price of entry is really difficult. And that's why all these games release free to play, is because it's a lot easier to just spend time on something than it is to spend money. And especially in a multiplayer game, not only do you need to get the guy, that's willing to give it a shot to spend money, but you also need to give him a product that they can then evangelize to tell their friends, to be like, hey, like, this is where, this is the new shit. We got to play it. Obviously, I think Deadlock kind of falling out of the sky in a pre-release form. The new shooter from Valve, which is very similar, didn't do them any favors. The fact that, Call of Duty, the next Call of Duty is coming out, like, this is not a good time of year to be around here. That didn't do them any favors. So they stepped wrong in a lot of ways here. I don't necessarily know that I need to see this game, though, because as you said, like, the biggest criticism of all is that there was no, like, people didn't feel anything about this game. Right. Like, not that it was great or not that it was bad. It just existed. It was just another one of these. And so, like, if that's all you have to offer, I don't know, like, bin that shit up and let Firewalk move on to a different project that, that's not just chasing the latest.
I think, Jason Schreier was one of the first people to report on this morning, and he made a really good point about the sort of reaction to this too, which was, every time a live service game with no hook or strong word of mouth fails to penetrate an oversaturated market, the most annoying people on the planet will be there to blame diversity.
Oh God, really? Is that what the fucking story was? Oh, Jesus Christ.
Of course it is. It's the game was too woke, and that's why it failed. It's like, that has nothing to fucking do with it.
Overwatch has the most, like, diverse cast of characters in any video game ever, and was the fucking king of the world for 4 years.
Right. Overwatch has an extremely diverse cast. Fortnite, obviously, it's fully customizable. Like, there's the diversity aspect of the Concord cast has nothing to do with anything with regards to why it flopped. But of course, we're already seeing that because dum-dums are gonna be
naturally
racist on the internet, basically. So
okay. I mean, I don't know why I'm surprised, but I am surprised nonetheless that's the angle that's being pursued by some folks in the wake of
No.
this game's cancellation. Okay, if you say so, guys. But whatever.
Yep.
Let's take a quick break, and then we will be right back with more just tremendous news. More really, unfortunate news coming from Sony by way of Bungie. Last spring, Bungie released Marathon director Chris Baird. Chris Baird also kind of headed up the Destiny multiplayer for a really long time before he moved on to Marathon, which of course is a multiplayer specific game. But he was let go, and the details weren't really revealed as to why. It was pretty buttoned up. Well, we found out why, thanks, of course, to none other than Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, because he was accused by at least 8 female Bungie employees of inappropriate behavior, reportedly including calling the women attractive, being flirtatious, asking to hang out, suggesting they play Truth or Dare, all while he was the director at the studio. Something that he would reference in suggesting that maybe he could help their careers.
Right. This was definitely someone who was trying to, just based on that alone, definitely trying to play up his position of power within the company to get what he wanted out of these women. But like, fucking Truth or Dare, bro? Like, how old are you? What are you, 12? Like, and like, I'm sure there's some dude listening to this right now that's going to say like, oh, well, I'm like calling women attractive is bad. Like being flirtatious is bad now. And it's like, one, you're at work. And I'm pretty sure this dude is also married anyway. So what do you do with flirting with other women at work? But it's the idea that when you are a man in a position of power, in a professional setting, it is not appropriate to do these things at work. It doesn't matter what company you're at. That's not appropriate. I have had to go through so many fucking rounds of sexual harassment training at every job I've ever been with, where they outline why it's bad to do this and why it's especially bad when you are basically someone's boss to do this. So yeah, it's not saying that like, oh, he assaulted anyone. It's not saying, oh, he, put his hands on anybody. But like, you can still be extremely inappropriate with coworkers when you behave like this on the clock at work in your supposedly professional environment with your female employees.
And again, and I always struggle with this because I am a very logic-minded person. And you would think that with all of the stories that have come out about workplace harassment in the video game industry by high-ranking people, leadership, that sort of thing, over the last several years that have been highly publicized, that we all know is out there, you would think that as a leader, you would say, okay, seeing all this stuff out there, maybe I should look in the mirror and see like what are things that I'm doing that could be possibly construed the wrong way, and be honest with yourself and make extra sure that you're going out of your way to act in a manner that is considered appropriate. Don't get too fucking friendly with people that report to you, essentially, or report to people that report to you. Like that's even worse, as if you're like 2 or 3 steps above where somebody is. So the fact that there are still dudes, and it's always dudes, who are falling into these situations boggles my mind, because I don't understand how people still allow this to happen to themselves. And I guess most of it's just because most people are too egotistical to realize, well, it couldn't be me. Like that's those other dudes that are doing that shit.
And
that's
of course, like,
he
made a statement to Bloomberg saying that, well, I feel like I have always conducted myself with integrity and been respectful and supportive of my colleagues. I never understood my communications to be unwanted, and I would have never thought they could possibly have made anyone feel uncomfortable. And then, of course, ending it with, if anyone ever felt that way, I'm sorry, which is not really apologizing. That's the, well, if you feel that way, then I guess I'm sorry kind of bullshit. But per Bloomberg sources, Barrett would befriend women across various Bungie departments and then bombard them with text messages, which blurred the lines between professional and personal. Several people interviewed described his advances as unwanted and that they felt uncomfortable given Barrett's greater seniority at Bungie. So, yeah, apparently, Bungie did a full investigation into the kind of messages that he was sending these women and decided based on that investigation that he had to go. So
yeah, there's no tolerance in not only in most workplaces for this stuff, but also in just society in general for this stuff. Like when you're found out for this sort of thing. So again, to any video game leaders that may be listening, just stop doing this shit. It's really not that fucking hard. And apparently, like reportedly in the past, IGN has reported that like Bungie's HR is not the best at reacting to this stuff. There were reports previously that
they described it as like a boys club kind of
or that HR would protect specific individuals that were in prominent positions and stuff like that, and try to sweep things under the rug as opposed to acting on it. And in fact, with this story, it's reported also that when he was let go, they were just told that he was on sabbatical. It wasn't until much later that everybody realized, like, understood that, oh no, he's gone. And Joe Ziegler, who formerly worked on Valorant, is now heading up the game as the games director. So again, I don't understand why this shit, why people just can't get their shit straight. I guess it's nice that it's happening less, or at least we're finding out about it. Like stories like this are breaking less frequently than they were for a couple of years there.
Yeah, I mean, God, it was such an avalanche of that stuff a couple years ago. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you still have dudes in position of power within the gaming industry that just don't seem to get it. That just don't seem to get that maybe texting your female employees with personal messages is not appropriate. Maybe you don't do that. Like,
knock that shit off. Again, it's not. It's really not fucking hard. It's really not. Just, again, if you have people that report to you, I don't care if you've been working with them for years, like, understand where the line is and understand how to create boundaries. It's what adults do. So, speaking of questionable adults, Randy Pitchford back in the news this week.
What a good segue.
Yeah. So basically, not a great, bit uneven times for Gearbox right now. So, obviously the Borderlands film came out, was shit, received really poorly, heading to streaming this week, I think, after about a month in theaters, which is never a good sign. Also, I don't, and you're not obviously aware of this because you don't play this game. Risk of Rain 2 just released a new DLC that is being met from the very dedicated Risk of Rain community very poorly. I did not realize that Gearbox had purchased the rights and also had taken over development of the game from Hoplu Games, who created Risk of Rain originally. Who, by the way, there's news this week that Hoplu is now with Valve and working on stuff for them, so that's very interesting. But this is the first DLC that Gearbox has been the sole proprietor of for Risk of Rain 2, and it, again, launched terribly. Not just the DLC part of it, but also the changes they made to the game itself, the base game itself. So that's not great. And so he got called out online by somebody talking about, the developer's, quote, recent judgment and shot calling ability. And Randy Pitchford says, I'm going to defend myself. I'm not going to take this lying down. And we're going to keep taking hacks at the plate. And here's his quote. I wish everything could be a hit, but that's not how it works. The greatest musical act of all time, the Beatles, had a 25% hit rate.
Which is not correct on a few fucking levels. Someone was quick to point out, as far as if we're qualifying a hit as something that lands within the top 30 or top 40, the UK singles, they had 22, UK albums, they had 12, hit rate 100%. singles in the US, 29 singles released between 62 and 1970.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Albums 18.
Like not
and
every,
all of them.
Not
all
every
of
song
them.
on an album becomes a single, Randy Pitchford. Like
exactly. One, not every song on an album becomes a single. It's not how the music industry works. Number two, the Beatles are not the greatest musical act of all time. I could go on and on about that, but it's this whole like even their worst stuff is gold. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Lovely Rita sucks. Obladi Oblada sucks. There's a lot of stuff that Paul McCartney wrote for the Beatles, particularly in like 67 and 68. That is dog shit, bro.
I wasn't expecting you to get triggered about the Beatles aspect of
I am so fucking tired of talking about the Beatles, Brad. I was raised by a couple of boomer ass parents who had both seen the Beatles live in 65 and 66. My dad saw them in DC. My mother saw them at the famous Shea Stadium show. I'm tired of the Beatles.
Bradford. See, I'm a huge Beatlemaniac still to this day. I love the Beatles.
I can enjoy the Beatles, but I had the Beatles thrust upon me with such ferocity that it was like, if I listened to anything else, it was being compared to the Beatles. It was like, thinking back on me just wanting to be like, Dad, can I just please listen to NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys in peace? Like, I have seen Paul McCartney 3 times. I have seen Ringo twice. I have met Pete Best.
That doesn't really. I mean, that's like being like, hey, I met Shemp of the Three Stooges.
Look, it fucking counts regardless in my mind. It's look. I have a lot of thoughts about the Beatles, and all I'm gonna say is that their best song wasn't even one of their hits because their best song was "Hey Bulldog." So, I
do find it ironic that the Beatles stirred up some controversy in the late '60s because of an offhand comment that I think it was John Lennon made that said
it was John Lennon who compared them, said that they were bigger than Jesus.
Bigger than Jesus, right? They got a lot of heat about that. And we were giving Randy Pitchford heat for saying that, like that he's on par.
It's just like it's a dumbass fucking it's a dumbass thing to say on a number of levels. One, it is the complete misinterpretation of how music works as an industry. But two, are you really going to fucking sit here and tell me that your terrible cash grab Borderlands film is somehow on the same level as Eleanor Rigby? Like, no, I will listen to Rubber Soul over and over and over again for the length of time that it would take me to sit and watch the Borderlands movie. And I'm pretty sure I would enjoy that experience much more than the Borderlands film.
There's a
I would listen to Obladi Oblada itself for that length of time, and I'm pretty sure it's still going to be a more enjoyable experience. And Obladi Oblada sucks.
There's a review on the Risk of Rain 2 Steam page that this Eurogamer article points out that says, quote, "It's mind-bendingly incredible to me that Gearbox can somehow go from ruining their own games to now ruining other people's already existing beloved good games," in reference to Risk of Rain. And the funny thing is that, like, Gearbox has a pretty safe bag. Like, Risk of Rain 2, again, very popular, very dedicated following. The Borderlands games are always incredibly successful. Maybe not Tiny Tina. I don't know how Tiny Tina's Wonderlands did by itself. But, like, the mainline Borderlands games are very successful. They have a lot of fans. I mean, look, my issues with Randy Pitchford and my my wearing of the Borderlands humor aside, like, I'm still probably going to play Borderlands 4 because I'm really satisfied with the gameplay loop in those games, and they're a lot of fun.
So Tiny Tina's Wonderlands was basically reviewed as like a 7 out of 10, and apparently Take-Two said in May 2022, shortly after its release, that sales had exceeded the publisher's expectations.
So it probably did really well then, because I'm sure Take-Two expected it to sell on like a level like maybe like 60% of what a Borderlands mainline game would sell. So probably did better than we think it did. So again, all you have to do, Randy Pitchford, is just stop being yourself, which now that I say it sounds incredibly difficult to do. Maybe have less porn stored on hard drives that you leave at medieval times. Maybe stop doing magic tricks during PAX panels. We really don't care. We're there to see video game coverage, not your, burgeoning second career as a street magician. And yeah, just make the games that we want to play.
I have a question for you, Brad.
Yeah, what's up?
Given that you just professed you are still a Beatlemaniac in the year of our Lord 2K24, what is your favorite Beatles song?
Cam asked me a question about Oasis in the post office, but I was thinking about that. Now I have to think about.
You can give me like 3.
All right, hang on a second. I need to jog my brain. 8 Days a Week is one of them.
Okay.
Let's see here. Oh, I need to find. I'm just jogging memory of Beatles songs. Because I like a lot of Beatles songs. I've never really thought about what are my favorite.
There's a lot that I like. For as much as I just spent 10 minutes dogging on them, there's a lot that I like. I just don't go out of my way to really listen to it.
Lady Madonna's pretty good.
Okay.
Yesterday is always a classic, but a little bit played out, in my opinions.
Yeah.
Julia's pretty good. Nowhere Man's up there for me. I don't know why I didn't think about that.
Nowhere Man's got a good bass line, but it's not one of my favorites. I think my favorite album is probably Rubber Soul, and then Revolver's a really close second.
Revolver's probably up there for me. Yeah, I mean those are the ones that spring to mind immediately going through.
Okay,
this, so
I think my 3 are probably Hey Bulldog, Taxman, and I'm Looking Through You.
Oh, I'm Looking Through You is really good too. Yep, that's a good one as well. Taxman's good too. Yeah, like I said, Beatles are great. I don't know why you're out here throwing shade at the Beatles.
I'm just you gotta understand. It's like I wasn't given a choice.
I do. I mean, I understand that part of it. Like I was exposed to them naturally because my mom listened to 105.7 all the time when we were growing up. So
sure.
like I was exposed to all the
QSR.
Yeah,
back when it was
absolutely.
QSR. Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, I miss WQSR. But no, I wouldn't say I terribly go out of my way to listen to the Beatles today, because I feel like after having an entire childhood and adolescence of basically that sort of like being put on me, I needed to just sort of like cut and run and detox from the Beatles for a long time. Here's the thing. I am more likely to listen to George Harrison solo stuff or Traveling Wilburys than I am to listen to the Beatles these days.
Let me tell you something. My wife's cousin is married to a man from England, and his sister and her boyfriend, who are also both from England, came over, and we hung out with them for Labor Day yesterday. And you know how some people say that they were born, they're a person born out of time. They would have been better off in a different time. I was born in the wrong country. Like the more I go through life, I'm just like, man, I really just should have been born in the UK. Because I identify more strongly with all of their cultural touchstones than I do with anything over here. So.
Oh.
So some bad news. We're back to the layoffs again. This shouldn't surprise anybody, but Rocksteady hit with some layoffs. Frankly, I'm surprised that it's just layoffs and not a full studio closure, given how badly of a miss Suicide Squad was. But they cut the QA department in half, basically, from 33 members to 15. They also said that they got rid of some other redundancies. as well, which again is very unfortunate, including one person who was let go while they were on paternity leave. So that's always a winner right
That
there.
sucks.
So, yeah. So again, hopefully, I hope that all those folks land on their feet, and I hope that we don't see more happening to Rocksteady. And then another piece of layoff news, and these are the ones that are like the worst, the scummiest ones, where folks at Ballistic Moon, who is currently developing the Until Dawn remake that's coming out in October.
I didn't realize Until Dawn was getting a remake.
It is getting a remake. It's coming out this year. They laid off several people at that studio before the game even has released. So they don't even get to celebrate in the successful launch with their colleagues before having to go find new jobs, which, again, very, very unfortunate. The last news story of the week. If you thought that the Microsoft acquisition would tone down some of the worst instincts of leadership at Activision, you would be wrong. Raven Software was the first Activision studio to unionize. Their QA team specifically were the ones to do it. But now they filed a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board saying that Activision and Microsoft have been stalling over labor negotiations to cement a union contract with the union, and saying that they are guilty of refusal to bargain or bad faith bargaining. The quote from the CWA president, Claude Cummings Jr., after Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, our members were optimistic that they would progress quickly to a first contract at Raven Software. Unfortunately, that has not happened. We encourage Microsoft to address the concerns raised in the unfair labor practice charge and make reaching a fair agreement a priority. For what it's worth, Microsoft has said we are committed to negotiating in good faith, but did not say anything past that. So this is the step 2, right? Like, it's all well and good to form a union and to be recognized by the company, but now you actually have to hammer out the agreement. And I think that's where we're going to see like the next stumbling blocks, especially with a lot of these pioneer unions, the first folks that ventured out into this space.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's nice to have the unions, but will the unions be able to actually enact the collective bargaining agreements that they want? That's really the next step. So.
Yep. So more to come on that story. As we learn more, we will take another quick break, and then I will regale you all with tales of strategy games that I am currently amassed with. So I talked about, I've been playing a lot of Civilization. I've been playing, I played Humankind. I've been playing Stellaris. And that, for some reason, has made me turn to all of these strategy games that are on my backlog, and has really encouraged me to play them. And I wanted to get in a lot of game time this week, because this week is kind of the beginning of the new release season for me specifically, because Astrobot comes out this Friday, UFO 50 comes out in a couple weeks, which is a game that I'm excited about, and then there's a pretty steady cadence of releases that are happening through the end of the November release season. But I've been playing a couple games. We all have flaws as gamers. I think my biggest flaw is like Tobias Funkang myself into believing that no, there's not a genre that I don't like. I just haven't found the right game in that genre. Like, yeah, like I didn't care for Fire Emblem, and that means I'm probably not going to care for a lot of other turn-based tactical strategy games, but maybe this one might work for me. And so I finally sat down and spent some time with one of the Mount Rushmores of turn-based tactical strategy games, XCOM 2, which has been on my backlog for a very long time. And I played it for a couple hours, played through a few missions, and Carrie, I think I have finally determined that I just don't get down with turn-based tactical strategy games. I think that's the conclusion that I reached.
Well, good on you for making the effort, I guess. Look, obviously not every game is for everybody.
That's right.
I really like turn-based tactics. I don't like real-time strategy games. I know that those are not for me. I like my little anime chess board, basically. That's
Yeah.
really what Fire Emblem is. Look, XCOM's great. XCOM is also merciless
It is.
in level of difficulty. I appreciate. There is nothing like XCOM 2 to remind you that 99% is not 100%.
and you know what's funny is that people criticize them because so and they don't announce this to you, but they admitted later that this is true, that on most difficulty levels the game kind of does the same thing that Baldur's Gate 3 does, where in the background it's tracking how well or poorly you're doing, like with your die rolls essentially. And if you go on a bad run of poor luck where you're missing a lot of shots, they will start progressively weighting the die rolls to your favor secretly in the background without showing you like they'll show you, oh, this is a 70% chance to hit, but in reality it's more like 85, right? Because they know that it's a good experience for you to not fail constantly. Like as much as people say, oh, I'm fine living and dying by the roll of the dice, like actually no, like it's really fun. It's really not fun to get bodied and to get kicked in the teeth. So they took heat for that. But with me, it's just, I don't know, it's just the tedium, and I guess I'm just not very tactically minded, because even when I think I'm doing very smart things, the computer still manages to find a way to be like, oh, actually, you're a complete dumbass. We're going to flank you, and we're going to fuck up your troops in short order. Don't you worry about that. And now I'm dragging 2 corpses out of every mission, essentially.
As the saying goes, Brad, that's XCOM, baby.
Well, and the thing with Fire Emblem that gets me and is because, like, those battles are so long sometimes, man. And, like, if you fuck up and you have to just completely redo 45 minutes of gameplay, like, to me, that's just, like, devastating in ways that I can't possibly fathom. So that's it for me. The stakes are too high. Apparently, I'm not as smart as I think I am. I'm much smarter when it comes to strategy. I'm not smart when it comes to tactics. I think that's what I fucking learned through finally sitting down with XCOM and being like, man, I am a dumbass. Like, I'm really good at overarching smart ideas. Like, obviously, like the base building part, you know, that's cool. But like, put me in a tactical situation, and it's like there's a tree directly in front of my face, and I don't realize there's an entire forest around me that I could be viewing. So next time I get excited, and by the way, it's not just this game. Like, I tried fucking what's the one that's like Advance Wars, but it's not Advance Wars? Wargroove.
Wargroove.
Yeah,
yes.
tried Wargroove. Bounced off of that. Yeah, just so next time I get excited about a tactics game that's coming out, remind me about this about this episode, so I can listen to myself tell me, don't play tactics games. You're bad at them and you don't have fun. So stop buying them. So that's my pledge to myself. You mentioned RTS. I am now very interested to play RTS games because I watched a YouTube video. I don't remember the name of the content creator, which sucks, but I might link it in the description. Which basically talks about, like, why people struggle to get into RTS games. Because when you think of RTS, obviously you think of, like, StarCraft. You think of, you know, especially competitive StarCraft, where you have, you know, 18-year-olds in Korea doing stuff like somehow memorizing these chains of commands, doing 300 actions per minute, and it looks impenetrable. And this YouTube video actually does a really good idea of breaking down, like, hey, when you play these type of games, like, you don't need to aspire to be like this pro level player that's doing like 300 APM and that kind of shit. Like, you can just like play the games as they are, and like even if you go online and play like ranked multiplayer, like, you'll still do pretty well at the low levels if you are even halfway decent. Like, you obviously won't be able to get in like diamond rank or anything like that, but like,
right,
for the most part, you'll have fun. And the game series that he uses as an example is Age of Empires, which is a game series that I know that I've had been aware of, but since I didn't play on PC at the time where Age of Empires was at its height of popularity, I didn't really know anything about. And apparently, Microsoft has done a really good job of releasing like up-resed revisions of these games over the past couple of years, including Age of Mythology, which comes out literally tomorrow. And this video that I watched made Age of Empires look really fun. So I think I'm going to get Age of Mythology and give that a try and see if I can get down with RTS, which I feel like is a bad decision on my part to go down this rabbit hole, especially if I learn to enjoy it and get good at it. But it looks interesting. And since tactical turn-based strategy is not for me, maybe real-time multitasking, which I am a really good multitasker, will be much more of my jam. The strategy game that I have been playing that kind of fell into my lap out of nowhere. So the Heroes of Might and Magic series is probably one that most people have heard of, I would imagine. Heroes of Might and Magic 3 specifically was arguably the most beloved of that series. Ubisoft is remaking they're making a new Heroes game that's a prequel, but I think it's supposed to adhere very closely to Heroes 3. That comes out next year. But there was an indie game that has been available for a couple of years now. It just went into 1.0 a couple months ago called Songs of Conquest. And again, from the screenshots, when I didn't really know anything about the game, it looked kind of Fire Emblem-ish, just from what I saw. I got it as part of a bundle with Age of Wonders 4, which is another game, a strategy game that I'm looking to check out at some point. But this came with it. I was like, all right, I'll check this out, give it a shot. And it turns out that Songs of Conquest is kind of a modern reimagining of a Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And it's really fucking good. And I've been really having a hell of a time playing that. So the premise of this game is you have your main character. They're called a wielder in this game because they can wield magic spells, right? And you have an army that you can muster, that you can, the kind of the whole premise is you're on this like overworld map that your wielder can travel along and go to, different sites of curiosity that'll get you resources, and you can establish towns which will kind of generate passive income for you across a various number of resources. And the goal of the game is to essentially eliminate all the other wielders on the map. Okay, and so when you run into fights in this game, you actually don't use your wielder in battle as a fighter. They just kind of stand back and cast spells, but you deploy your retinue in this kind of small, like turn-based skirmish game against whoever you're fighting. And I don't mind this turn-based content because these are very small battles on very small battlefields, which are very manageable. And then your wielder can kind of just stand back and cast these powerful spells that you can gain access to, because your troops also generate a resource called Essence, and essentially as you generate Essence, it unlocks different new spells that you can cast and sort of that sort of thing. And that's kind of what it is. Like you're going along the overworld map, you're building up your economy as much as you can, and then fighting battles, and hopefully going to be the last person standing. And the kind of like the tension in the game is getting to these like resources that are on the map available for everybody first, and then trying to hold down, like defend your town because other people can come in and invade them and stuff like that. I wasn't expecting to like get as infatuated with this game as I did, but it's really, really fun. Has a great art style to it as well. It looks kind of similar to the recent HD 2D games that Square's put out, like Octopath Traveler and the Pixel remasters and stuff like that. But the sprites are a little dirtier, which I think it just kind of works well in this game. So that one I would say, if you've ever played Heroes of Might and Magic, give Songs of Conquest a look. And even if you haven't, it's a really interesting game. Again, just hit 1.0 recently. I think it's like $25. I feel like there's a lot of game there because there's besides being able to play multiplayer and do the skirmish mode if you want as a single player, there's also 4 campaigns around, 4 of the factions that are in the game. And there's also a map editor, so you can kind of make your own maps as well, and play other people's maps in addition. And I think there's like a heavy mod scene for the game, which the developers like openly encouraging. So very, very cool stuff for Songs of Conquest. And that's my big recommendation right now. Get into Age of Empires, but come Friday, I'm probably gonna be playing a lot of Astrobot, because that's gonna be very exciting.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be playing. I got to finish SMT5 Vengeance. I've been itching to replay Paradise Killer, largely because I have a cover of Paradise Killer.
You got a month left. You got a month to play stuff before before all of our collective lives come to a grinding halt for a few weeks. Because Metaphor is looking real good. So
Metaphor is looking real good, and that comes out like a week and a half after like the new Zelda comes out, which I'm definitely going to be picking up. So we'll see. I've got so many shows going on this month that like it's hard for me to like be able to focus on a game that like demands a lot of my time for an extended period of time. So it's definitely been just sort of like short little bursts of thing. So
well, we're going to take one more break, and then we will come back with the Dense Pixels post office, where we answer your questions. If you are not a member of our Discord, you can join by going to densepixels.com/fans, where you can answer, or ask us rather, questions in the Dense Pixels post office that we will answer on the air. We'll start with Cam. This is for Carrie specifically. What do you yourself personally feel as though was the best wrestling show of this weekend? Was it Bash in Berlin or NXT No Mercy?
I don't know, man. I don't watch wrestling like that.
I only watch Bash in Berlin, so by default, that's my answer. Cam also asked do you believe in Joe Hendry? Joe Hendry's interesting. So, like, Terrence, probably to the surprise of nobody, vehemently dislikes Joe Hendry. Like, does not get it, is not down with it. I think Joe Hendry seems like a perfectly fine wrestler that has a very over entrance / gimmick. And as we've seen with many wrestlers over the years, that having an entrance or a gimmick like that is enough to get you in the door, but it's not enough to necessarily to sustain you to prolonged success. It's not going to get you to the top of the card. There has to be something more there that fans can get behind, because the novelty of the entrance does wear off over time. So Carrie, Joe Hendry's whole thing is that, like, whenever you say like his the way his entrance music starts is literally say his name and he appears. And kind of the gimmick that he's been running is like when someone mentions Joe Hendry, magically he just like appears as if out of nowhere on the scene. and it's been kind of incredible because he's a TNA wrestler, but he's been making a lot of waves on WWE's NXT. And he's kind of the first wrestler to really cross over and gain a foothold in NXT. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the prolonged future looks like, because again, he works for TNA. He's not a WWE employee at all. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, Joe Hendry's got the Riz right now in pro wrestling parlance, but we'll see if he can keep that momentum going as well. T-Wash says, what game do you wish was more successful so there was a sequel? They recommend God Hand. I feel like we already know what we're gonna say.
What? Obviously, Golden Sun's my default answer.
Yeah.
If I were to be, outside the box with myself here a little bit, it's interesting because like I would want to say like Paradise Killer, but I don't want a sequel to Paradise Killer because. At least not a direct sequel, because so much of, I think, that game's interest is the fact that like there isn't a canonical ending. Like there's a number of different ways that the trial at the end of the story can go, and the folks over at Kaizen have been very deliberate in not canonizing any of them. So you couldn't really do a direct sequel without canonizing one of the potential endings of Paradise Killer. I really want to see a prequel. I think it's almost more likely to get a prequel. And they actually did a Reddit AMA today where they basically said like they have a couple ideas for a prequel that they want to explore, but they're sort of focused on their next game, which is Promise Mascot Agency currently. So we'll see what happens. I would love to see that though. So
I will, in the spirit of following your lead, I will not mention Kings of Amalur, which is usually my default here. You know what was a cool puzzle game that only had one game come out, really flew under the radar, never got its due, that I think I would have been interested to see another spin on, and that was Meteos for the Nintendo DS.
Interesting. DS had a lot of really cool little one-off puzzle games like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm only reminded of it because I also checked out Last Call BBS, which was kind of the swan song from a very under the radar indie studio called Zachtronics, who self-published a lot of their games. And Last Call BBS, it's basically a game system that mimics like an old Commodore 64 that they have kind of they made some original puzzle games that you can play on this system with your computer. And they have I don't remember what the game's actually called, but they have like a interesting falling block puzzle game that kind of reminded me of Meteos a little bit. Also kind of reminded me of the Yoshi puzzle game from the NES, Super NES days that a lot of people also didn't play.
Yoshi's Cookie?
No, not Yoshi's Cookie. There was a puzzle game called Yoshi, that had where you had to like basically capture like enemies in an egg. So like the bottom of the egg would fall down, and you had Yoshi at the bottom, and he could like flip the panels or like flip the ledges like in Tetris Attack. But
I'm
you had
looking
to,
at this now.
Yeah, you had to like stack like creatures and then hit them with the top of the egg, and the bigger stack that you made, the more points that you would get. Essentially.
Okay.
I played the shit out of that game when I was a kid.
I'm learning about this now. It's like I'm familiar with Yoshi's Cookie just because it's called Yoshi's Cookie. On a sort of similar note, you mentioning a DS game got me thinking. I would love to see the Hotel Dusk franchise brought back. So Hotel Dusk was like a really early DS game. And I thought it was really cool at the time because you held your DS sideways in order to play it, almost like a book. And where the touchscreen was on the right side. And I really liked that game in high school when it came out. And a sequel was made called Last Window, The Secret of Cape West that was released in 2010 that never made it to America for whatever reason. So it has an English translation. It released in Europe, but never made its way to North America. I always thought that the one Hotel Dusk game that I did play was really good. I'm a sucker for a good like mystery visual novel, basically. So that's a really niche kind of thing. So obviously it's only ever going to do so well. You know, murder mystery visual novels are kind of, you know, they generally do okay, but they're not the most popular thing in the world. So I would like to see Hotel Dusk brought back. That's definitely a series I would love to see brought back.
That's so bizarre that they did a like you do an English localization and release in Europe, but you can't print like 10,000 copies and just release it in the US. Like you would have sold them, I would imagine.
Yeah, I feel like you would have sold them, but I mean, who knows? That was coming out. It came out at the very tail end of the original DS's life cycle as well. So I just wonder if they were just sort of like, fuck it, like not worth spending the money to get it approved by the ESRB or fucking whatever, right? So
that's a good call.
Yeah.
Mad Coco G asks, which non-Capcom Marvel game would you want Marvel to get to re-release on current gen consoles? I'd pay good money for that arcade exclusive Spider-Man beat 'em up Sega made back in the mid 90s.
Maximum Carnage, which was which until I looked it up, I thought was Capcom, but it wasn't. It was Acclaim. They
Mm-hmm.
did Maximum Carnage.
The
And
red cartridge, famous on Super Nintendo.
And then they did Separation Anxiety, which wasn't as good, but I think that would be a fun like 2-pack that you could up-res and bring back. I think that would be fun. So here's extremely mid-90s games in a lot of ways.
So here's what's funny. I'm trying to think if I even played any Marvel games back in my youth except for the fighting games. I don't know that I necessarily have. Obviously, like I played the X-Men coin op, beat 'em up, but I think that has been an addition that has had to come around at some point. I don't know if it was like remastered or anything. The Genesis X-Men game could also be in that realm as well, with the famous at the end of the game you had to literally hit the reset button on the console to complete the one level. That's kind of what that's most known for. So whatever you guys want, I want to make you happy. I know that Marvel Nemesis is not going to be the game on anyone's list because that game was garbage. But for some reason, I have a very vivid memory of it, just because a lot of people bought it at GameStop just because it said Marvel on it, and then they got home and realized that game was trash. So.
Yeah, it would have been. Here's another interesting sort of thing that would be cool for them to maybe finally finish in some capacity would be X-Men Mind Games.
Yeah. Oh, actually, you know what? Just because Ultimate Alliance, or actually no, they did re-release Ultimate Alliance 2 and 1.
Yeah, I think so.
You're right, they did. Okay.
But X-Men Mind Games was a 3D action game that was supposed to be released for the Sega 32X. A prototype of it was put online in 2009, where the only playable character is Bishop. It was probably it was canceled. It was never fully finished. Like the prototype is extremely fucking buggy because it's a 32X prototype ROM. But the whole there was a full soundtrack to it that was included in the prototype and whatnot. So that's one of those oddball little things where it's like maybe that would be worth revisiting, is one of these games that was well into development and prototyped and playable in some capacity, and then just canceled because who the fuck had a 32X?
Yeah. I mean, I think that beat 'em up games are rich for re-releases because, again, we've seen sort of a revival of that genre.
Of a renaissance of the genre in terms of not just, new games, but remakes of older stuff as well. I mean, obviously you've got River City Girls, which was a big success in a way that I don't know that people were expecting. Shredder's Revenge was released to really, really strong reviews. So
Streets of Rage 4 also
Streets
probably
Rage 4,
up there. Yeah. So I mean, I would imagine that there's probably the ripe examples of those that you could potentially put out.
Yeah.
With Marvel licensing. Phil Wander asks me, what has happened to Max Verstappen's F1 dominance? So for those not paying attention, defending 3-time champion and crazy race winning Max Verstappen has fallen off quite a bit over the last several weeks. He's not won a race, I want to say, I don't know, I think it's been 5 or 6 races now at this point, winless streak, which is kind of unprecedented for him in this day and age. And he's not even finishing on the podium in the last couple. He has been down the order into the middle of the points finishing, and McLaren and Ferrari have been paying dividends. McLaren now just 8 points back of Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. Lando Norris slowly gaining ground on Max in the Drivers' Championship, but I think that gap is probably still a little too large to do at this point in the season. So a couple weeks ago, Red Bull had said that they had changed their floor to a new spec, and the drivers didn't like it, and now they switched back to the old floor, but Verstappen still was shit this weekend at Monza, so I don't know what's going on with the car. Sergio Perez came out this week and said that, the problems that I've been dealing with for the past like 10 races like are finally starting to catch up with the max now with the cars. So I don't know. Like the theory that I had with my wife when we were talking about this is that I think that Red Bull got to the ceiling of the current spec of cars faster than everybody, and that's why they've been dominant for the last 2 years, basically. But I think everyone's kind of catching up now, and Red Bull doesn't have anywhere further to go upwards. So I think hopefully the rest of the season, and with fingers crossed, all of next season will be hyper competitive in F1. That would be pretty cool before we get the new spec cars in 2026. Sorry, Carrie, for that for that F1 explainer. And finally, Cam asks, after learning that I love Oasis last week, I've got to know what my favorite Oasis song is, and there is a correct answer here. So I know that Cam is probably expecting me to be like a fucking like a loser Oasis guy that just kind of talks about the fucking single, like, Wonderwall is my favorite song, or stuff like that. No.
Right.
I love the entire Oasis catalog. I'm not just gonna fucking throw out Wonderwall or Champagne Supernova or shit like that. My favorite Oasis song is "Do You Know What I Mean," which is the top track on "Be Here Now." Because it's my favorite song, because that's the song that kind of got my attention, got me into Oasis. Because obviously I'd heard like Wonderwall and shit like that before, but like that song really caught my attention, so it's always been a sentimental favorite. And the song that my wife and I danced to at our wedding for our first dance was "Live Forever," so that also is in my my top Oasis songs. So those are the two for me.
Okay.
Carrie, do you have any opinions on Oasis at all?
I don't really care for them that much. There's 100 other artists from the 90s that I'm going to willingly go out of my way to listen to before Oasis.
More of a Blur fan, I see. Obviously.
I mean, between the two of them, I would rather listen to Blur, personally.
There was in the 90s, there was a major dispute between...
Oh, I'm well aware of
Oasis
that
and
shit.
Blur, so.
Look, I might be younger than you, but I'm not so uninformed of 90s music trends. Look, big thing for me is I don't care for the vocal style.
That's fair.
It is unpleasant to me. I respect Oasis. Here's the thing. Here's what I'll say about Oasis. Is if they come on the radio, I'm not going to change it. Like, I will sit and passively enjoy Oasis.
But you're not going to go out of your way.
I do not go out of my way to listen to Oasis. I understand that for many people, Oasis was their fucking end-all, be-all of 90s music. Mine is Alanis Morissette. I know Alanis is not for everybody. It's a matter of taste. Just for me, I have a lot of friends who were extremely disappointed trying to get tickets to that tour. But you know what? Good. If you're a fan of Oasis and this is your favorite band coming back together for the first time in 15 plus years, stoked for you. Good for you. It's not for me.
It's been incredible for me because, like, obviously the band broke up kind of in the nascent days of social media. So like this entire time that social media has become a thing, Oasis really hasn't existed as a current group, right? And so when this reunion was announced, it was really interesting to see people that I follow and people on my feeds who like freaked the fuck out about it, and I'm like, I had no idea. We were
I had no idea. So many of my friends were enormous Oasis fans. It's been really funny to see, honestly.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Cam, for the record, my number 3 song is "Fucking in the Bushes," which was probably also one of my favorite needle drops in any movie, because that's the song that they use during the last boxing match in Snatch, when Brad Pitt's character is supposed to go down. And then knocks the fucking dude out and makes Jason Statham think that he is about to die. But I'm not going to spoil the end of Snatch for you if you've never seen it. I am curious to hear what the quote correct answer is from Cam, and to see if any of the 3 songs that I mentioned was it. But that is the last question from the post office this week. So we got ourselves a podcast in the can. So again, don't forget to join the Discord by going to densepixels.com/fans. If you're listening to this on a podcast service, go to youtube.com/densepixels and watch the video version if you prefer. Or if you're watching on YouTube and you're like, you know what, I'd rather have this on a podcast app. You can search for Dense Pixels wherever you download fine podcasts. We'll be there. You can also check out the other TNP studio shows. And if you're just like, I can't get enough TNP, I need more TNP in my life, good news, go to densepixels.com/premium, $5 a month. You get access to the premium slate of TNP shows, which right now is mostly just the full episode of Look Forward, which, you know, if you're into American politics or want to be, it's great. The back half of the episode, the paid portion, is where me and Jay get really off the rails a lot of times and talk about some really crazy shit a lot of episodes. So you definitely want to tune in for that, and more coming down the pipe on the premium feed soon as well.
Real quick before we wrap up, if you are on the West Coast or traveling to the West Coast anytime soon, my band Byscore has 3 shows coming up this month. The first is this Saturday in Oakland. It is called Game Over Oakland. It is at a bar called 7th West. It is headlined by Lacey Johnson. It's going to be a really fun time. The next one will be in Southern California in Palmdale at Transplants Brewing Company. That is September 21st for Brew Game Plus. That's going to be headlined by the Megas with Kirby's Dream Land. Vic Viper is getting back together for the first time in like 5 or 6 years to play a show. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then at the very end of the month, we will be on the main stage on Friday evening at MagWest doing an all Shin Megami Tensei and Persona show, just to tie into the MagWest theme this year, which is themed to Persona. But MagWest is going to have a lot of other incredible acts. You've got fucking Master Boot Record. You've got Lotus Juice, Mr. Juice himself from the Persona franchise, who, of course, was one of the main voices you heard on the Persona 3 and Persona 3 Reload soundtrack.
Oh, that's where that name is familiar from. I was like, I've heard that name, but I don't know where it's from.
Tiberian Sons are going to be performing. Lacey will be there as well. Odyssey Eurobeat, Super Soul Brothers, Super Guitar Brothers, DeLorean Overdrive, all sorts of extremely talented folks performing at MagWest this year. So if you're going to be there, let me know. Would love to see you. And please support my band Byscore. We have shirts now. It's very exciting.
you do truly have a lot of shit going on.
I do. Yeah, it's astounding I managed to do this podcast on top of everything else. But yeah, if you think you're going to be able to make it to one of these events, definitely let me know. Would love to see you.
Well, that sounds lovely. And we thank you for watching and listening to this show. We'll see you all the next time.
See ya.
You're watching the Dense Pixels YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button while you're here and make sure you check out our weekly podcast where we discuss the latest gaming news and our impressions on what games we've been playing.